morning. Happy Friday. I'm going to try something a little bit new today. I mentioned in a previous video that economics are kind of the bedrock on which finance is built and on which capital markets function. So I thought it'd be good, kind of each week, at the end of the week, I'll talk about a little basic economic concept or principle and help you understand why markets do the things that they do and governments and all the things like that. So today I wanted to talk about the principle of economies of scale. And economies of scale is when a company gets big enough to really minimize its costs, specialize its labor, and therefore offer a much lower per unit price to its customers. Sounds like a really good thing, and it definitely does have its good aspects, but it also has its bad aspects as well in its real-world application. So, starting with the good, great example is, if you were riding a fucking horse in the beginning of the 20th century, here comes Henry Ford, who is able to achieve economies of scale and mass produce his car and offer it at a very affordable price. Well, that was great. I mean, that was a great thing for society. It greatly increased people's capacity for transportation, and there wasn't horse shit all over the place. It was a great thing. But also in that same kind of time period, in that same event, you could kind of see the downside of economies of scale, the dark side of economies of scale, because with everyone having cars, well, everyone needed to fuel those cars, and we needed fueling stations all over the place. And Henry Ford actually designed his cars to run on either gasoline or on alcohol. And alcohol would have been a much more sustainable fuel source. I mean, you can ferment almost anything, fruits, vegetables, wheat, whatever you want. But there was a gentleman by the name of John Rockefeller who was an oil magnate, and he didn't want to lose all the business. He saw the potential of cars. And so through lobbying to government, and you'll notice there'll be a recurring theme through these economics videos, I do not like the government, especially big government. But through lobbying to government and through propaganda, he was able to convince lawmakers that alcohol is a terrible thing. And what did that result in? That resulted in prohibition. And so, of course, that pushed gasoline to the front of the line as a fuel source because alcohol was so vilified. And even when they did want to use alcohol as a fuel source, well, they had to put a little bit of oil in it just so that people didn't drink it. So through these kind of insidious means, Rockefeller was able to achieve economies of scale in the fuel market. And once prohibition was repealed, alcohol never had a chance, because that is another kind of result of economies of scale, is these companies get so big that they create very large barriers to entry for new companies and new innovators. I mean, taking it in today's world, I mean, good luck trying to start an airline right now. Good luck trying to start a search engine. These companies have become so big that there's huge barriers for new market entrants to try to compete in those markets. So, there is certainly good sides, like I said, but a lot of people argue that these big barriers to entry stifle innovation, and they essentially crush small business, which we've definitely seen with Amazon. But while we can't control all the factors that lead to economies of scale, we can control a huge one, and that is, like I mentioned, lobbying to government. When the government is enacting regulations and making laws based on these companies' lobbying efforts, and these laws result in greater barriers to entry, that is a terrible thing. That is something that we can easily control and a problem that we can easily solve, and we certainly should. So, hope that sheds a little bit of light on this for you, gives you a little insight. Have a great weekend.